This is Fantology.
You may have heard of us.
All right, what's up, Avengers? This is Steven, your host with Fantology Podcast. I have my lifelong friend Josh here with me, and we have a special guest and friend, Doug, who has been on before. It has been a minute, but we don't review a ton of Marvel stuff, and that's what we're doing now. And so we knew that we needed you back.
Thank you. Well, glad to be back. It has been quite a while. So
probably like a couple years. And we really need to have more guests. It's usually just the lifelong friends all the time. But anyway, we're talking about Echo, which came out by the time this releases, it will have been about a month or so, is like early January. And reviews were kind of all over the place for this one, which is why it kind of caught our attention and thought, let's actually review this, because a lot of Marvel things have been either like kind of derided or kind of loved, and this one seems to be like really loved or really anyway, let's try to give our voice to
well, I haven't been on in a minute, because you're right, Marvel has been derided for quite a while, but except for, funny enough, the Spider-Man properties seem to be the only ones that have come out since Endgame that have been really beloved. Can't think of it. Well, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
I feel like Guardians was really good. People generally like that, right?
Yeah, and it was really good. But yeah, so the Marvel stuff has been a bit of a mixed bag since Avengers Endgame, right? But I'm excited to talk about this one. Let's go.
Yeah, I feel like this one is the first time I have felt like I wanted to get a voice heard with a Marvel property in a long time. I feel like my opinion has been kind of the mainstream of like, they've had some hits, mostly misses, and I've pretty much agreed with the general consensus that they need to figure their stuff out. Whereas for Echo, I feel like I don't agree with much of the criticism that has been put out, and I don't agree with much of the there's been a few things I've watched that have just been universally praising it, and I don't agree with that either. So I feel like there's some some good, not like middle of the road, but like some good chance for dialogue that has been severely missing with Echo compared to the recent MCU status.
So Josh is promising a dually unique take. So definitely continue listening to hear this groundbreaking stuff.
Yep, exactly.
All right, let's jump into it. So, I mean, just to kind of get the conversation started, I mostly liked it. I think once we get more into the weeds of what was going on, there are certainly some things to nitpick, but I thought it was a solid, above average show that did a lot of cool things. I did think that the marketing was weird, and it was not the show I was expecting when I started watching it. So it kind of took a second to recalibrate, especially like I'm not really deep into the weeds of Marvel. So once I started watching it and Daredevil was there and then he never came back, that was kind of disappointing, because I thought from the marketing, I thought we were getting a Daredevil, like at least he was going to be some kind of sidekick, but that did not happen. And it was kind of weird how they advertised it very much like TVMA, violent, really kind of lean into the grim stuff, which, there was, but it wasn't as much as the marketing.
It wasn't Netflix.
Yeah,
it wasn't close. Okay, can I share some thought? This is one of the big subjects.
That was my kind of high level. So okay, Josh, keep it high level, and then we'll kind of drill down.
Okay, high level. Well, with building off of what you said, I think that the worst part about the show was the marketing. I think they absolutely did a terrible, terrible, terrible job marketing it. I think for two reasons. One, like you said, it wasn't that violent, and they leaned into like one killer drop, like with the blood splatter across the screen. And really, I feel like Secret Invasion was more violent than this was. Like, it might not have had quite as much blood splatter, but it definitely like dealt with heavier themes in terms of like it had more people dying in it. It had more it had more torture in it. Like, I don't think there was
suggested violence. That's the difference, right? Between suggested violence and gore.
I don't know. I mean, there was on-screen violence in Secret Invasion. There's the guy that was being tortured in the butcher shop, and then there was like that whole scene in the butcher shop where they just went in and like mowed everybody down.
And there was the attempted coup inside the Skrull compound.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it was I think pushing the lines of TV-14. I'm not saying that one should have gone TVMA. I'm just saying that like this, if you took out like a few blood splatters, there's no reason why this couldn't have been TV-14. And oh, sorry, go
Well,
ahead.
you would have to take out more than a few blood splatters. You'd have to take out some, I think, key scenes. One being Fisk beating the living crud, just beating the ice cream guy to death, right?
Near death, but yeah.
And what's that?
Near death. I don't think the guy died.
You don't think he died? Ah, that dude looked dead. But then also there's there was the initial scene where she first realized that she was enjoying killing when they went to take down Fisk's competitors. And she snapped the guy's neck. But there's all the other two guards that went with her. There was a lot of violence in there too.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily arguing that they should have made this TV-14. I think it was fine that was TVMA. But I think that if you're coming expecting like super violent, like Punisher, Daredevil style show, you're going to be disappointed when you watch the show, if that's what you're hoping for. So that's my, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, but I think we talked about this off screen too, but I think they kind of had to put that in there because they didn't want people thinking it was like other Marvel fare, and then letting their like 11-year-old watch it to see Fisk beat up the one guy to near death and the scene inside.
I agree. I just think that there's like pretty much an easier line that they could have walked with, being like still flash the TVMA sign, still like make it so that parents know that they're turning on a mature show. That's fine, but like still it was marketed as like an adrenaline, like fuel, like you're gonna come in, you're gonna see like all this crazy death and destruction, and there was some of that, but I just think it led up to a lot of disappointment for people, including me to some extent. Like having still liked the show, it wasn't what I got excited about. Like I think I would have liked it a lot more had I not watched those teaser trailers.
For me, as a Marvel enthusiast, I watched most of the stuff and I generally like it. I mean, I loved the Netflix stuff back in the day, and it really seemed like the marketing was geared towards those of you who liked the Netflix stuff back then and have been kind of bored by what we're putting out recently. Here is more of like that exact thing that you used to really like. And I still liked Echo, but it wasn't what I thought it was going to be just from that buildup.
It was less than what they promised. Echo was, and keep in mind, Echo was something else entirely that we have no idea what it was because they had massive reshoots during that, leading up and after the strike. And while I agree with everything he said except for one point, the marketing was bad, but I don't think it was the worst thing about the show.
Okay.
Okay. That's on that. But while we're on the topic of Netflix, and people excited for that, it is another show that got completely scrapped and has been completely reshot and is related to this, is Daredevil Born Again. And they didn't just hire back the same actors. They also hired back the same crew from Netflix. So they are probably trying to, a lot of the violence probably came in the reshoots. That's my assumption. I don't know that at all. And they were probably trying to get some of that in there to give that little tease back towards the Netflix level, because they also in the press canonized the Netflix shows. Yeah. So go ahead.
I think that this is leading exactly to where I want to go with it. I think it would have been so much better had you, like, first of all, they've mishandled Daredevil terribly in the in She-Hulk. That was so dumb. But assuming putting that aside,
I deleted that from my memory.
Putting that aside, if they wouldn't have done that, but even if they had done that, if they wouldn't have even talked about Daredevil in the show, and then like you go in cold, you're like, okay, this is gonna be Echo. We're getting some Kingpin in there, but maybe if you don't maybe you just kind of tease Kingpin, and then you go in and you see Daredevil have a cameo in the episode, and then they drop like that same night that they've recanonized the entire Netflix shows within the context, that would have like lit the internet on fire. You know what I mean? Like that would have propelled the show into the spotlight.
Yeah, which is
It's-
why my assumption is that a lot of that came in reshoots, and that's why the original Daredevil board game was completely scrapped and everyone was fired and they rehired Netflix. It like was not planned.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
but I'm just talking about specifically with Echo and the way it was marketed. We saw like all of Daredevil's screen time in the trailers, pretty much. Like he had like
Yes.
90. So if they basically like promised Daredevil, didn't give us Daredevil, so they disappointed everybody that expected Daredevil. Whereas if they would have just like kept their cards close to their chest, and then like dropped a Daredevil cameo in episode 1, then like everybody would have lost their minds. Instead, everyone was disappointed that like there wasn't a little bit more Daredevil. When
Well,
you know what I mean? Like
they sort of painted themselves in a corner by choosing to introduce Echo the way they did instead of sticking closer to the comic book origin, which would have been closer connected to Daredevil, because she was used by Wilson Fisk to prove to Matt Murdock that Fisk wasn't a bad guy. Like, look, I raised this girl. Look how nice she is. But Daredevil first sees her as a violent criminal, killing a bunch of other violent criminals. So that's out of the work, right? And they were supposed to fall in love that way. That was Matt. Every Daredevil story in the 90s and 2000s was Matt Murdock falling in love with someone who wants to kill him. So it wasn't Electria Nachios, it was somebody else. Electra Nachios, not Electria. But yeah, and then also Echo was the first Ronin.
oh, I didn't know
comics.
that. That's cool.
So while the artist later admitted that he drew Ronin was male looking because it was a big mystery box sort of thing, borrow that term. But and he initially was going to make it Matt Murdock. He decided last minute to make it Echo, which works because her abilities in the comics was reflexive, like photo reflexive reflexes. So it was like she and they showed that in the show, also in the boxing match. She could see the twitches of the muscles and everything that the boxer was about to do, that the kickboxer was about to do. And that gave her the reflex she needed to counter it. So then that's where she got her term Echo from. That's where her name Echo came from. It had nothing to do with
not the
an echo
ancestors
of past ancestors giving her power. It was all about her being able to echo people's movements, which was her ability.
This is why we need you on the show, Doug.
It would have been awesome to see that too, because and I guess this leads into one of the other subjects I was thinking about is and one of the other things where it's like I don't think the changes were objectively bad. It's a subjective change, right? So she was more like her fighting style was more acrobatic and agile in the comics. She was like, I think in the comics she was like 5'10" and 140 pounds or something like that. So she was a much more acrobatic fighter. And in this one, they made her a stand-up brawler, right? So that's a change they made. And I think they had to give her that history and that story with and tie into the theme of mother-daughter connection that they were doing in order to give her that ability to be a stand-up brawler. The actress is also bigger too. So
well, and if she's Daredevil, to me it makes sense if she's Kingpin's daughter type thing. Like Kingpin is all about the physicality, just kind of barging in and physically overpowering whoever he's facing. So I think if she saw that, then kind of modeled herself after her. I think it works. But
yeah, so it's like, do you like that change or not? I think it works for this. I think we're in a world where you have people who build suits of armor that are perfectly bulletproof inside of a cave. You have a serum that turns a scrawny kid into a 6'6" beast. We're having powers from ancestors of the past. I mean, after Doctor Strange and Loki and everything like that,
yeah,
what's the difference there?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I think that's the kind of meta thing is I think that there were issues. I think that if I would have gone in expecting more of a meditative character study, which is what it was, then I would have maybe even been happier with it instead of going in and expecting like a thrill ride and then not getting very much of that. So
should we talk about that? the meditative character story, Maya, her whole
Mm-hmm.
backstory and plotline through. Yeah.
So, like I said, that was the biggest change in character for her. The backstory was completely changed. She wasn't the first Ronin. She wasn't used as a non-violent pawn. She was used as a violent pawn. So a lot of things were. She had a similar character arc that we've seen in Marvel already. I would compare her character arc to Black Panther. Think about Black Panther and Civil War. Black Panther and Civil War even just monologues his character arc to Baron Zemo. At the end, he says, like, those guys are tearing each other apart. I've been tearing people apart, all for vengeance, and I don't want vengeance anymore. And then the Black Panther movie is all about protecting and bringing other people in, and that sort of was her character arc. She was killing her emotional pain by causing physical pain, and then chose to change and learned about her ancestors. Again, Black Panther went to the other realm, saw his ancestors, changed his ways. She gets to have visions of her ancestors, decides to then protect her homeland, which happens to not be a fictional nation in Africa, but instead is Oklahoma, and her people. And so she has the very similar character arc there, with the psychological, with a few couple changes that the ancestors are connection to mother to daughter, and the whole ancestors of power thing and that sort of thing. But yeah, so honestly, I thought the character was good. I thought we've seen the character arc done well. I think it was done well here. I don't think that was an issue at all. I think that was one of its strengths.
I think the Black Panther comp is good. I hadn't thought of that before, but yeah, it's right there.
Yeah.
And I actually did appreciate. I think this. I've heard a couple bits of hate about the getting mother power from other women in the past. I've heard some complaints about that, but I actually kind of I like that. After I'm a father of 3 children, and there was the connection that she had with her dad too, who also was physically violent and using that. But then it was also like I've seen there is something to that. I think there is something to a connection between mother and daughter, and I think that was a good theme. I think that was a very good theme. It's what brought her around. It's what actually. It wasn't I think like the mother's power of healing pain, like it's symbolic of something that I think is real. I do think that there is a way where I've seen the way my wife works with our daughters, and there just is a way where mothers can ease the pain of their children, all children, not just daughters. Just happens to be daughters on this show, but of all children. I actually dug that. I thought that was a very awesome, real thing that we haven't seen done in Marvel before. We've seen done in other media, in more serious, realistic fiction media. I don't think we've seen something like that in Marvel before. So I thought that was unique, and I liked that.
I agree. I mean, and I think it's silly to get that kind of hate. Like, how many times have we explored the relationship between Thor and Loki and their dad, Odin. Like, we got that same plot line like 3 different times of like Odin being disappointed and then being happy and then granting them power or taking it away. Like we went through that process. How many times
inevitably, a show like this is always going to draw that criticism from those corners of the internet. But yeah.
So anyway, I did like that. And we can talk more about the ending later. I do think I was pretty disappointed in the fruition of that, like how that was portrayed on screen. I think it was very lackluster, but I do like the theme of that and how that was kind of the thing that she needed to do was come to terms with her past. But
and since you brought it up, that is what I think was the worst part of the show.
It is the worst part of the show. Yeah.
not the marketing. It was the rushed ending. It was the sending the powers randomly, this ability to send the powers to 2 other people. And it was rushed. It was chopped. there were some other awesome characters involved in that scene that got like 5 seconds of screen time for what they did. And we can talk about those awesome characters in a little bit, because I do love the supporting cast of the show was absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
But yeah, that ending definitely seemed rushed. I think you needed at least one more episode to get into that ending, and I thought that was not. There was no setup for it. I don't really feel like, as far as the way the powers manifested themselves and that sort of thing, like the way they just came out of nowhere as like these ghosts, and then their abilities went to other people instead of going like all into her at once, and her being able to use like the echoes, right, of what they had worked hard for. Because that's kind of the vibe I got. Like, the one ancestor worked really hard to become a marksman, and so she had that ability to be a marksman, kind of like Bullseye. She was like ricocheting stuff all over the place. Another ancestor worked really hard to be acrobatic and athletic, and so she was able to manifest that. Another ancestor was just really strong, the first Choctaw female that held up the cave. So she was able to manifest that. So if that ending was more of like, she was able to manifest all of those at the same time instead of one at a time like the show had done in the past, that would have been a much more believable lead up, just to fix that one scene. If we weren't adding a whole nother episode, that's how I would have fixed that one scene.
And
So do you think the one scene was the problem, or the whole lead up of the plot at the end, or both, I guess?
Sorry, I know you're kind of presenting that to Doug, but I wanted to insert. I think that the lead up was really good. I think that they had positioned things in a really interesting way, where you had like a big cast of characters in the town, like her cousin or her cousins, like her, I'm forgetting her like female cousin's name. That was her best friend. And then her male cousin. Yeah. Like, you have all these like lovable characters from around the town. And then you have like these kind of baddies that have been like somewhat threatening. Like, so if they would have had like a big battle outside of the building, like in that little arena of like different characters, you grew to love, taking down all these bad guys outside, and then have like a big fight with Kingpin and some of his cronies inside with Maya and her grandma. You know what I mean? Like, that could have been really cool, and like have that over the course of an episode, like fighting outside, fighting inside, big kind of battle going down. I think it had the setup to be really compelling, and then they just like didn't do it. It was really weird.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, those people on the outside had like 5-second clips.
Yeah, it had like one shot of like a guy sniping somebody with a pistol, like 50 yards away. Like,
yeah, which, I mean, I don't know if you ever shot a pistol before, which you can hit far targets with it, but it loses a lot of stopping power when you go outside its prescribed range. But yeah, like they had like 5 seconds of time. There's a lot of awful conveniences in this show. A couple that come to mind is the powers that can now transfer to other people, even though they're not the ones receiving them. And then there's also the convenience of when they realized when she got captured, and they realized that she had a fake leg, and then they gave it back to her, and then it conveniently had a knife that she had never used before in any other fight scene. So, like, there were a lot of conveniences. It's like, and I do think there's a term, all's well that ends well. And I think the reverse is Marvel's problem. I think Marvel has had a lot of shows, a lot of movies that have begun really well and then ended awful and left a bad taste in people's mouth. WandaVision comes to mind. Shang-Chi comes to mind. Yeah. These properties that began really well and then just had a rushed, bombastic, unearned ending. Or rushed ending.
Yeah, this one I feel like they're like, okay, no laser battle, no laser battle. And then they just like went way to the other side of like having no battle at all. Like, you need something. You can have something. You can have a fight. But like you don't need spaceships and flying people going around, but you can have like a down-to-earth fight. And they set that up really well. I don't know. They made you care about members of this community. They made, they were having like her grandpa was, a cool mechanic, and he fixed her leg, and he was fixing things. Like, if he would have like, had like a cool contraption that he took out a bunch of bad guys with, like they just had all these, like the table like I don't know what analogy I'm making, but like setting like the dinner table, like they had like all the ingredients just in the kitchen that they like never brought out to the table, and then
Yeah,
they're
like
just like, okay, hope you guys had a good dinner. It's like, what happened?
yeah, you bring up a great point. I mean, if she had, instead of trying to go alone, instead of rushing Kingpin's arrival to the town and all that stuff, you could have had, Grandma could have been taken. They would have known. Grandpa would have been looped in. He would have started making traps. And so you've got that whole like knock out the lights and the bad guys are running into Grandpa's traps all over the place. You saw Biscuits, who's love that
Yeah,
character.
biscuits. Yeah,
I loved Biscuits. I just thought like that was such a lovable, like good guy. Like just really, like just loved his family, was willing to do anything for them. And he made that truck, and that was a skill. That was his one skill, right? He had the ability. He was a mechanic, and he made that truck. And we got like 5 seconds of that monster truck wreaking havoc when it could have
that
been
was
so
awesome.
much more.
Yeah,
Could have been so much more.
could have been awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
could have been way more awesome. Yeah.
And I guess we're on other characters we liked. The Grandpa Biscuits. Henry was one of my favorite characters. Was he an uncle, a cousin? I couldn't quite get his relationship. The bowling alley owner, Henry.
Something. I think
Something
cousin.
like
I thought
that.
he was
Uncle.
uncle.
I think he was
yeah.
uncle. Yeah, he was
Dad's
uncle.
brother. I think dad's brother. Yeah.
Yeah,
Or mom's brother.
So
maybe?
he was.
Probably dad's, right? Because he was involved in some shady stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he like, and that's one of the things I felt was very compelling about him was he was involved in the shady stuff, but he wasn't like the dad. He was doing it because he was just trying, and like I think you saw it. There was one scene that I really was really impressively written as a character, and it was after Maya blew up the shipment, and he was talking to his underlings there, his field managers or whoever they were, and he was just like, "Look, guys, this is gonna fall on me. It's not you guys. Don't worry about it. It's not you." And you could tell that he commanded his crew. He had their respect. He was doing a lot of what he was doing because Fisk was going to roll over that town one way or the other, and he was basically saying, "Okay, I'm going to be the bad guy, so nobody else has to be." And I got the feeling that like a lot of the people that worked for him didn't know really what they were, who they were working for, what they were doing. He did, and he took the brunt of that guilt on. And he even tried to shield Maya from it, even though she was part of it. When she came to see him, he was like, "Nah, like don't do this." And he tried to tell her to go away, and he was just going to take care of it from there. And I thought he was a massively compelling and multi-dimensional character. I would have loved to see a lot more of him and his skill. I mean, clearly he had some. He sniped somebody with a pistol.
Yeah.
So clearly he had some skill.
I like this criticism because I feel like at this point in my life, like I'm not as the big explosive action scenes just don't really do it for me anymore. Like I care a lot more about character arcs and development. And so the things you guys are bringing up are more of like, we wanted this character's arc to pay off in this cool way and have this moment that kind of, turns the tides, or they're able to contribute in their small way and whatnot. And I agree. I think that would have all made it a little bit better. I think for me, I think I like the show probably more than both of you. Not a ton more, but at least a little bit more. And I was really just kind of there because I really liked Maya's character and her arc. And I have seen some criticism on the internet of, she was basically an unlikable character and she kind of screwed over her family and just using people. And if you think about it from a face value, like I think there are some points there, but on the other hand, I feel like that kind of misses the deeper point to her character and what she was going through. So I really liked that whole turmoil. And I think my favorite scene was when she was talking to her mom, or the echo of her mom or whatever, as she was like gearing up for the final fight. Like that was really well done and had a lot of emotional payoffs for me. And that really kind of made it all worth it. I didn't care too much about the action. I don't know, unless there's like something brand new and awesome, the action just doesn't do it for me anymore.
They definitely had a chance to be the action to be more grounded, more like Netflix Daredevil-esque or Bourne Identity-esque. They definitely had, and they didn't go that route, right? They went the super powered, like hand the powers off so that the 60-year-old lady can start knocking out 30-year-old dudes. And so they went that route. But yeah, so I don't understand the criticism that, oh, she just did this. That sounds like it would be a plot driven story, but this was definitely a character driven story.
Yeah.
She as a child was definitely forced into situations that numbed her and put her on this path. From her dad taking her away from feeling guilty for the reason her mother died, because she wanted hot chocolate, to her dad taking her away and from her entire safety net, and her grandmother, who was her safety net, cutting her off, to then having the only person who seemed to actually do anything actively to care for her other than her father being Kingpin. And what she witnesses him do is beat a dude to death or near death. I definitely feel like her character was doing things that made sense for her story, for the situation she was put in, and the choices that were, as a child, made for her, and then how she was manipulated by Kingpin and told, like, this is the only way you can handle your pain, is to cause pain to others. And that is actually in line with the comic story, which is Kingpin had her completely fooled. She definitely believed that everything he did was good and for the greater good, until she does fall in love with Matt Murdock, which is how it happens in the comics, and she sees things the way they are. But I definitely think it was character driven. I definitely think that was a strength of it. Minor criticism, back to what you said after she suits up, is I don't think that costume looked good. That's minor criticism. I don't think it looked good I think it looked better on the mannequin than when they had it on her. It didn't look like the same costume. That's a minor criticism. I didn't like it.
So I think we started off talking about my two biggest complaints about the show was the marketing and the end. I think that those are definitely the worst things. I really like the show because I really think that they nailed her character and the study of her character. Like, honestly, no notes almost for that. Like 9 out of 10, I'd say, for her character development, which was what the show is about. And I wanted it to be like, they did a good job for 5 of the 6 episodes making it about her character, or 5.5, because half the first episode was just a recap and a Daredevil cameo. But other than that, it was an amazing character study. And so that was by far my favorite part of the character, or of the series. And I would take it another step further and to say that really she's like one of the few characters in the MCU right now that I like really, really care about and really, really want to see again. I mean, there are others, but like, do I care a ton about Doctor Strange right now? Like, not really, you know. And I didn't even hate the new Doctor Strange movie. I thought it was fine, but like, honestly,
it's just kind of played out at this point.
Yeah, but like, honestly, I don't really know of many characters that I want to see their journey continue as much as I want to see her journey continue.
But and why is that, right? So what has Marvel departed from? Because we all cared about the other characters, and what I think is, in the end, it's multiverse is the problem. It's this. It's almost the over the top fantasy elements. Like they took fantasy characters like Thor, and they grounded them pretty well while keeping fantastical elements that mattered. I loved Loki was the opposite of what I've said earlier, where Loki like started off slow. Loki season 2 started off well and then ended amazingly. But there's another super fantastical element that they really grounded quite well in a character story.
Yeah.
And so what Marvel departed from with Doctor Strange, with some of these other ones, was that character, right? And that's where Shang-Chi failed too, if you want to talk about other things we haven't talked about in a while. It started very grounded with this character on the base level in San Francisco, and then ended with a fight in the air with dragons, right?
Yeah, completely missed the conflict with his dad. Like, they didn't even wrap that up. They just like...
Exactly. Yeah. But I agree with you. We care about Echo. Who else do we care about, right? We care about Spider-Man in that Sony is bringing into the MCU. That ending to the latest Spider-Man movie was heartbreaking. You know, he realized he could not have it if he wanted his friends to be happy, and so he let them completely forget about him. And he missed MIT, and he was sitting in that donut shop or whatever it was at the end, and realizing that Zendaya's character, Zendaya's MJ, didn't even remember who he was.
Mhm.
even as Peter Parker. Like
Yeah.
it, like, and then that grounds it, right? That grounds the character who had Doctor Strange in the movie, who had fantastic elements, who had the multiverse, and
Mhm.
yet we still actually would want to see what happens next to Tom Holland's Peter Parker.
So, do
Yeah.
you think the issue is relatability to these characters?
100%.
It's no, I think, yeah, I think that's right. I also think that it's not relying on gimmicks to make a good story and to rely on characters. Like, think about Ant-Man. That whole movie was just a gimmick. Like the Quantumania, it was
Yeah, I
just a
didn't even
gimmick.
bring that one up.
Yeah, it was just a
Well, yeah.
poorly, nobody, there was no effort into making good characters at all. There's no effort into like expanding any of their motivations. It was just oh, let's go on a little adventure, which is, I guess, fine. Like, I'm not saying that, like, there can't be bad pulpy like MCU movies. There can be, but like, it's just we need some more characters like Maya
Well,
and Peter.
what stinks with Ant-Man is that they had the opportunity to do a character-driven story. Here's a dude who was locked in what he thought was 5 minutes of time, and comes out, and his 5-year-old child or 6-year-old child is now a teenager who is also scientifically minded. And you had an opportunity
Yeah.
to explore what happens to a Paul Rudd loving father who missed his daughter's entire life, her entire childhood. And how does that daughter respond to that? And then they go on this adventure together. And how does that happen? But again, like with the Shang-Chi and father thing, like with that one, that whole relationship was also just like, oh no, Dad, we love you. Like I saw you yesterday.
Yeah.
Like you didn't miss anything.
Yeah, I agree. And
Mhm.
so I think that's the hard thing with the MCU right now is they're kind of leaning away from characters in most of their properties.
But that's where I'm hoping. That's where Echo actually gives me hope.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
they leaned into the character,
Mhm.
and then they set it up with characters that we did care about. Although another criticism, I don't think they handled Wilson Fisk as well as they could have. And
I don't think they butchered him. I think that they did a decent job with him.
I hope
I thought
that
he
he's
was
not
below
neutered.
average.
I hope that he's not a neutered character after that ending. We did get the post-credit scene where he wants to become mayor of New York City now,
which is like lead in to Daredevil, right?
Yes,
I think
that would definitely be a lead into Daredevil, especially if we've already canonized what happened in Netflix Daredevil. I just hope that when she did her mother heals the pain trick on him, that he doesn't become like, oh, now he's the hero, and we're gonna have a replacement Kingpin.
I don't think we will.
I don't think so, but I just
look, they butchered him in Hawkeye. They had him go in and get beat up and then shot. Like that's how you butcher the character.
Well, Echo did shoot him in the comics, to be fair. She did shoot him in the face.
I know, but fine. I'm not saying he can't get shot in the face, but he got beat up by, it wasn't even by her, right? It was by it was by I can't
Kate
remember.
Bishop.
That scene when they were in the
Yeah.
shop, and then he just wasn't intimidating at all.
Wasn't it Kate Bishop and Clint Barton? Wasn't it Hawkeye and Hawkeye that did it?
I don't know. I just remember being really disappointed.
Wasn't he wearing like a Hawaiian shirt?
Yeah, he was wearing
a suit?
he was wearing his white suit with his Hawaiian shirt. Yeah, I
It
would
was
like
just-
explanations why he was wearing that.
It was weird. It was
yeah.
weird.
That was
butchered.
as bad as the Daredevil suit in
Yeah.
She-Hulk. Yeah.
Yeah, that was bad. And so to see him like, okay, well, this is actually resembling the Kingpin that he was in the Daredevil comics. I'm not saying they did it as good,
but yeah, he wasn't nearly like as committed or as just like hardcore as he was in Daredevil. I thought he was, for whatever reason, he just was not himself. From what I remember, it's been a long time since I've watched Daredevil.
He had gotten shot in the face, and he had gotten like put in his place by Daredevil, and had gone through his whole Daredevil arc already.
So
I think
you
it's
think
fine, but
you think Kingpin was sufficiently humbled before this? Because I was just and you actually probably answered my question before I asked, because I was thinking the flashbacks looked more like an awesome Kingpin than he was in the
murdering
current
his
timeline,
interpreter.
Right? Yes, the killing of the interpreter,
Yeah.
the sending his goons there in the guise of a meeting just to kill them all. the beating up of the Ice Cream Man that we keep bringing up, like he was way more vicious and way more Kingpin like then. And I guess if they did canonize, he did go through that whole Daredevil thing. He did get the crud beat out of him. We don't know what happened to his wife or girlfriend, fiance. I can't remember if they actually married or not.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that character.
Yeah.
So we don't know if she like left him because she was like, "Oh, you're like," if she's like, "Oh, well, you're actually a weak dude. I don't want to be around you. You let this blind guy beat you up." I don't know what happened to her. But so who knows? Maybe he was humbled. It seemed like they were trying to go with him being vicious, though. The way he like went in there and like slyly got grandma to start talking and took her on and it was going to kill the whole town.
Yeah. I think that they went with a conflicted character that still definitely commands a whole criminal empire and is still an intimidating force, but also has been, humbled a little bit. I think they did a good job.
My take is that Kingpin can't be humbled. Like that would be my problem with it then, because like for me, if this is a guy who was fueled by a 45-year-old memory of being abused. So if he just got his butt handed to him and abused, he should have been worse. Way worse. Like there should not have been like a pick what you want, Maya thing. It should have been like I'm going to level your town while you're not home. Like, and you're going to come home to everybody dead.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
It did seem a little strange.
And then for her to do the whole like 2-finger, like, I'm going to heal your pain. I'm going to take away that 45-year-old memory from your heart.
Yeah.
Like, give me the hammer. Like, I don't know.
It was a little weird. I don't know. If we see Kingpin keep going on his arc where he does try and turn into more of like a political, like, first of all, a lot more about the comics. I don't really know where this arc is heading, besides like watching a few YouTube videos about it, what I mean? So
here's where they could do well with it. Talking about comics, Dark Avengers. Instead of Norman Osborn is Kingpin. So Dark Avengers, Norman Osborn has what was called the Iron Patriot armor, which they already MCU changed that. And he was the Iron Man of it. And then he got Wolverine's son to be Wolverine in it. And he got Venom to be Spider-Man. And he got all the evil versions. All those, cool. Like one of the big complaints of the MCU is that the main hero in his origin always fights a version of himself. That's in Marvel Comics. So there's an evil copycat, like doppelganger of every single hero. And Norman Osborn put all those together to make Dark Avengers, right? Well, here you have an MCU where there is no Avengers. Iron Man's dead. Captain America's old and gone. The one Falcon who took on the Captain America mantle isn't really starting the Avengers. And you have the Thunderbolts being one of the teams that they're clearly forming, but you have no Avengers. So what if Kingpin puts the Dark Avengers together?
That'd be cool.
Like that's one route. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what Dark Avengers you have that's not already in the Thunderbolts.
Yeah.
Huh.
But unless they make Thunderbolts Kingpin run.
I don't know.
Like their Suicide Squad.
I think that bottom line, I think that there's room for Kingpin's character to grow.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the comic book storylines are. That sounds interesting, but involving Kingpin in anything like that would be cool. Kingpin is a character I typically like gray conflicted characters, right? Kingpin is obviously a very conflicted person, but I feel like he's one that I don't need any kind of redemption plot line around him. Like he needs to be nefarious and conniving and maybe he's got some deep-seated issues and like that's cool. Bring those up for sure, but I don't need to see him partially redeemed in some like half-baked thing that is obviously never going to succeed.
I don't know if I want to see him redeemed, but I do think it would be cool to see his interests aligned with some of our heroes at one point and see them. You know what I mean? Like
as long as it's
his situation.
What's that?
Like in a bigger threat situation where like the hero
say some third party force is coming, like an alien invasion of New York. Where have we seen that before in the Avengers? But you know what I mean? Something like that where he teams up with. Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like something where he has to team up with our heroes to like conquer some bigger threat. I think would be fun.
And if you did go along with like the Dark Avengers thing, that would be him pretending to be good and fooling the people, with Matt Murdock not being the one who doesn't believe it. And being the one who's like, I don't believe you, and everyone then hating Daredevil. And then you go with that whole recognizable arc, which I don't know if we would like that. I guess it would depend on how it'd be written. I'm not a writer. So.
Yeah. Real quick, a few speed running things. Steven, I know you want to talk about something else too, but one criticism I hated, which I saw, which it was about like, it was, this one was from like an NPR review I watched or something, but they like were like, oh, it was just so dumb that they had like a superhero aspect of it. That always bugs me when people talk about how there's like superhero aspects of superhero shows. Like it just bugged me. I just wanted to throw that out there. Like it's just weird. It's just weird. Like you're watching, yeah, you are at some point watching a superhero show, so let them be superheroes at some level. You know what I mean? So
I mean, it started out with the first scene was obviously some
but that
magical
was one of the things,
thing happening.
Yeah. So that was annoying. But the other amazing thing is she didn't talk the whole series. And in my mind, like, right, and to be fair, I don't, like I haven't been that exposed to like the deaf community. I have some, like, this is like, it's all something that's pretty foreign to me. But when I think back about the show, there's nothing like that. It took me a while to even remember like that she just expressed herself so well. And like with the, that it didn't even like occur to me that she didn't actually have any like quote unquote like verbal lines in the whole show. It's amazing that how
it's interesting that you say that, because one of the criticisms that annoyed me the most I saw was that she was not expressive, that she was just like this RBF the whole series. I'm like, that wasn't even true.
But that was part of her character, was this like kind of intimidating, like stoic yet powerful, and through her and you did see a lot of expression
and emotionally shut off because as we discussed before.
For sure. And you do see expression. It might not be in face, it might be in body. It's in the hand motions when she's speaking her lines. There were great breaks of that character where you could see she was reconnecting with some of her innocence. When there was a huge smile that she did when the grandpa was cracking a joke after he built her the new leg, and the pre-good leg, like the between leg, and like she cracked a joke, she cracked a big old smile, and you can tell that there was a connection there. There was a lot of chemistry between those two actors at that time, and that was a great scene that stuck out in my mind for sure. She was definitely expressive. I don't understand that criticism at all.
I totally agree. It was like that I feel like that criticism, I mean, everybody can experience their media in different ways, but I feel like that one, people were just not open to the idea of somebody that's not verbal being an actor,
who expresses himself in a different way.
Right, exactly. It seems like at that point, like she did an amazing job. Something, it's interesting. I just watched Jack Reacher season 1. I kind of binged it. I've been up late with my kid all night, but it's a very similar where like a stoic character comes to town, reconnects with their past, fights a bunch of bad guys, like, and for the first like few episodes, he like hardly has any lines either. Anyway, it was just very similar where like, I doubt a lot of people making that criticism would like criticize Reacher in the same way.
And
even though
it's
a very similar, and it's a very similar arc where like the stoic person rolls back into town. There's some weird connections with their family. They solve a mystery. There's like an external force that comes into town. That's
the Western arc, right?
Correct.
And Reacher and Maya are very, very similar characters, to where they don't put up with a lot of BS. They kind of have like murky pasts that they don't really like to talk about. And it's a very, very similar character arc. And they both do it very well. But it's just interesting that like I haven't heard any of that criticism for Reacher, and yet that's a lot of the criticism I hear for Echo, and it's frankly a little bit sexist, I think. So
I think we can insinuate probably that some of that. One little reasons why is what I mean to say there. One little piece of storytelling that I really liked was how Fisk had that like technological solution to signing, even though he never bothered to learn how to sign. Compare that to everyone in her community, her family, that had all learned how to sign. I mean, and that wasn't really highlighted, but I think that just kind of shows you who Fisk's character is pretty easily, and it shows you how beloved she was in the community, and her family, obviously her mom and dad were really well respected and loved. And obviously, I'm guessing signing is not an easy thing to pick up. So the fact that everyone knew how to do it and remembered how, after all those years, I think that really kind of spoke a lot to where all the characters were at.
Great pull. And there was that one line where she said, "You never even bothered to learn how to sign."
Right, right.
Like, how could you? And there is real life connection to that. And I did hear, again, I'm not going to call it any channels, but I did hear another criticism about that being like, oh, but about how, like, why is that such a big deal? Well, it is a big deal to people. There's a real life connection there where, on the set of Hawkeye, Jeremy Renner and what's her name? The girl who plays Kate Bishop, the woman who plays Kate Bishop.
Haley Steinfeld.
Haley Steinfeld. They both learned sign to communicate with her behind the scenes. Obviously, cool. That was also part of Jeremy Renner's character, who was going deaf from his years as an Avenger, but he also did it to talk to her, like just off, like backstage, and she talks about how much that meant to her. And that is a big thing. That is a huge thing to that community, to be able to communicate. Any community, that's their language, right? You go somewhere else and you make an effort to learn the language of where you're at. That goes a long way. It shows that you care, and I think that was a great character moment. That was a great realization for the character as well, to see that dichotomy between this guy who says he likes me but doesn't do the effort, and then all these people who have made that effort.
And I like that they did throw that one line in there just in case you kind of missed the whole thing. That really, and it's cool. I love storytelling like this because it puts everyone in their place in such a simple way. It's not on the nose at all, but once you kind of see it, and it's almost like subliminal a little bit, where you realize, okay, these are the ones that love her. This is the one that does not, right there.
Mm-hmm.
And just along those lines, like I really liked the whole disability representation throughout the show. That's awesome. Like, as someone who's disabled myself, like you said, Doug, like any type of connection with the community is huge. And if people don't think that's huge, obviously, I mean, they don't get it. So how to tune those voices out. Again,
I heard this criticism, like, why did they make? Because Echo in the comics obviously was she was deaf, and that was the only thing. Everything else about her physicality was fine.
Right, she wasn't an amputee.
Yeah, the actress who plays her is an amputee. Or I don't know, amputee, or if she was born with that. She actually hasn't publicly stated why she's missing that leg. But to make that part of her character too adds that. It wasn't just to quote from this person I heard, check a box. It was part of who that actor is, and they made the effort, the writing effort, to make that part of the character. Do I wish that they would have kept out some things that were kind of like convenient, like the stupid idiot who's kidnapped her and gave her back the leg that had the knife in it? Could she have overcome that and had that struggle to overcome that? Yeah, that would have been really cool. And then get it back, for herself without the leg, and then get the leg back and shown that she was strong with or without the artificial leg. That would have been cool. So I would have liked seen that level of convenience. But for the writers to make the effort to make that part of her character, I think was a good thing. I think it added depth to the character, and to show, and they didn't just do it randomly. It was like that. It was also part of her guilt, right? So it was a scar, because she in the show she lost it when her mom died, and so it was a symbol when the grandfather gave her that new one that had all the symbolism of her tribe on it. Mm-hmm. It was a symbol of her going back to that, and the healing. And it's interesting that they chose a symbol of something that wasn't actually a biological body part that healed for her emotional pain, because that was something she lost when she lost her mom, which was the beginning of this whole thing.
Yeah, well said. Any other quick hitter last things to wrap on this?
We started off, we spent most of the time on things that we didn't like. I think that this is one of the best MC projects we've gotten in a long time. Gives me a lot of hope for where they're going in the future. It was definitely flawed. It was definitely, you could tell that they did not pull off the ending. They did not stick the landing. And there's a lot of reasons for that, I think. But I think that the core of what they were trying to do with having a good character study on like, this is what the MCU needs to do moving forward. And could it have been better? Yes. But they need to spotlight like these characters. They need to give them good, compelling arcs. They need to make them relatable, and they can tie it into fantasy, or they can tie it into a multiverse. They can tie it into the rest of the MCU, but they need to put these characters first. And this show did a great job of that. So it's kind of, it's building back my hope that they know what's going on. And also, we didn't really talk about that meta part of it. I think that this is good that they're kind of branding this like Marvel Spotlight or Searchlight or whatever branding it was, because I think it does give people a little bit more confidence to say, well, I haven't followed everything in the MCU, but this is promising that I can get the whole story contained within this project. And I think that that's great branding. So
I concur. I think it's definitely a step in the right direction. I think if there's one good things that the critical corners of the internet have done, I think it is push them away from what they've done wrong, and towards these more grounded character studies. I'm glad that they opted to rehire the Netflix crew to do Daredevil Born Again, and I hope that this show and that little bit of studio news is a step in the right direction. I definitely think this was good. I think overall ending, this was enjoyable and a step in the right direction after what we've seen lately. And remember, we all liked Thor after Ragnarok, right? And this was arguably a better character story than the first Thor movie.
that's true. Yeah.
So the criticisms aside, this was a good project, and it was going in the right direction, and people need to chill out. That's what
it blows my mind that this is the second lowest rated MCU project. I can't get my head around it. I can't get
how is it the second
it's so
lowest?
dumb.
Like,
it's so dumb. It's one of the, it's definitely like A tier Marvel in my opinion.
how is Ant-Man and the Wasp rated higher than this?
Yeah, what are we doing?
That makes no sense to me.
It's crazy. It's insane. That's why we haven't talked about that. That is what blows my mind. This is a good show. It failed at the end. There's no question about that. But it was a fantastic, it was a great show that deserves a lot more recognition, and that they didn't know how to market quite. And that probably gave people the wrong expectations coming in. So I could see somebody coming in, watching the first 2 episodes and being like, this isn't what I thought, and then going and rating it poorly. But like for anybody that stuck through and saw this character study and saw the performances that were on display, it was a solid show that does not deserve that rating.
I didn't know it was rated that low. I guess
I think that's just like the Rotten Tomatoes score, and maybe that's changed, but that's what it got a lot of coverage for.
It was the Rotten Tomatoes score, and it makes no sense because it's not even the audience score. It's not even those critical corners of the internet we're talking about. It was the critic score, and that makes no sense to me.
Yeah, you come on, and it was just annoying because every critic I saw, like, just the reasons why they didn't like it was so out of left field. Like, oh, they had superpowers at the end, they didn't need it. You're watching an MCU movie, let them have superpowers, like, even if it is like a grounded show,
And even though the superpower change was one of my lesser enjoyed parts of the show, like, that's not I would not rate this show low because of that.
Yeah, exactly. And again, you can think that they did a bad, but it was like the fact that there were superpowers, and it was what was annoying the specific reviewer. Like, yeah, you're watching an MCU movie, person. Like, come on.
What's the change with the studio? The Marvel Searchlight? Is that what you called it?
Yeah.
I think it's Is it Searchlight? Because that was the Fox thing, like Searchlight, right?
Maybe that's Fox. It's Spotlight or
I think it's Marvel Spotlight, but that's why it's confusing, because Marvel bought Fox properties back. So Disney bought the Fox properties. So is it Searchlight? I think it's Spotlight. And that's what that's their label for their new, more mature content, which I think there was already one on Disney Plus. I think it was werewolves one or something like that. I didn't see it.
I don't think that. I don't think it was even. So, I think that it's more than just the mature content. I think it's supposed to be like standalone projects that you don't necessarily need to see.
In order to
See, like,
understand
the rest of the MCU.
the big movies.
It says Marvel. This is in Variety. Marvel creates spotlight banner for titles without larger MCU continuity. The Marvel's director calls it trial and error, figuring out what. Anyway, I think it's meant. I think that they will use it a lot for mature, like
so it's
movies,
the
but
Marvel Netflix universe.
I think so. And I wonder. Well, I wonder if Daredevil is going to be released under, or not Daredevil. Shoot. Oh my gosh, the Merc with the Mouth.
Deadpool.
Deadpool. Yeah, I wonder if Deadpool will
Deadpool's
be
gonna be
released under it, because you don't really need to see anything else in the MCU to see
Yeah.
Deadpool.
They're gonna use Deadpool to introduce mutants, like because Wolverine's in it. So
That's true.
somehow.
Okay, but I don't know. Anyway,
Yeah.
like all the news around this is like like The Verge, Marvel's new spotlight branding will help you cut through the MCU's noise. Like, I think it's supposed to be like, okay, you can watch this project even if you're not up to date with all the other MCU stuff.
Yeah.
That's interesting. But do you think? And I don't know, because I've seen it all, it's harder for me to gauge. I feel like you would have had to have seen Hawkeye.
I think Hawkeye
show.
but I think that they devoted
the first
half of that episode to where you'd be fine. Like, I don't think you'd be fine watching Loki without the rest of the MCU. I don't think Loki would be a good standalone show without the rest of the MCU around it. I think that this is like, even if you missed Hawkeye, I do think that does get a little weird, but I think that you could still get the whole story.
You miss references, but that first half of the first episode, like you said, catches you up with the backstory enough to understand the story of the 5 episodes of Echo, 5 or 6, whatever it was. Yeah.
Well, you basically had one episode of recap of Hawkeye, so 5.5. We'll go with
5.5.
Okay.
It needed 6.5.
It needed 8. Let's be honest. Yeah.
8 would have been better.
Yeah.
Well, cool. I appreciate the Marvel pump up talk with you guys. Like I said, I'm very much an enthusiast. I've seen most of the things, although I have been kind of tapering off lately. Like, I haven't seen the Marvels movie, and I haven't even seen season 2 of Loki, which you said was really good, Doug. So I need to probably get on that.
It's pretty solid.
It's opposite of this one. It starts slow, but I think ends really well.
Yeah. Anyway, I really hope I'm not eating my words in like 2028 when we come around in another 2.5, 3 years or whatever, when we come around and do another Fantology MCU episode. But I feel like our episodes I feel like I was positive, and then I went through like the valley of death, and now I'm like coming on the other side of like, please be better. So anyway.
Well, we got to review Daredevil. I'm going to be pumped for Daredevil.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we'll do Daredevil.
Like
Next year.
Right? They're filming now, correct?
Yeah, because they scrapped everything they're reshooting. So yeah.
Which
right.
I think the only thing this year is Deadpool.
That's the only thing this year. I heard, Doug, did you hear what the rumors are, what they scrapped and stuff? And I know you need to go, but
I've heard some rumors. I've read some articles that it was mainly like Law and Order.
Well, I heard from what the rumors I read, this is rumors. I think it might have been Emergency Awesome or just some article I read. But I heard that they had Foggy die off screen. Foggy and what's her face? I think that they
Foggy and Karen. Yeah, I did hear that. They die off screen.
That they died off screen, and that he was just kind of moping around doing lawyer stuff for like the first 5 episodes, and upset that they died, and then something kicks off the action and sets in.
How boring!
Like, that would have been a terrible show. I'm so glad that got scrapped. Like,
they rehired both of those actors.
I saw that, and I knew that they hadn't gotten hired back, and that there was some drama around that. But to just kill them off screen, like, you can, and that would have been so bad. That would have been so
just gonna kill them off on screen first episode, and then still kill them.
Fine. Well, or just have them. I don't know. You can do something if you're not going to hire the actors back. But just having Daredevil mope around, having two of the characters die out, two of his friends die off screen, that would have just made for a really bad Daredevil show, in my opinion, from what I understand of the character. So
Yeah, it would have been terrible. That's why I said it was like Law and Order.
yeah,
That's everything I read. It was a court procedural without the police investigation. So it was like the second half of the Law and Order episode for a full episode.
and we saw, we saw how amazing they did with court procedurals in She-Hulk.
Yeah, we all want more of that.
We all want more of that. It's not like that
Trying to
crappy
forget
like
about that,
Better
Joe.
Call Saul. Like, who needs those kind of court procedurals? I mean, we got She-Hulk in the MCU court procedurals. That's what we need.
Oh,
Anyway,
All right.
on that note,
Good time, guys. Yeah.
All
Okay.
right.
If you want to check out more Phantology, you can check out all the links on the description below, yada yada. Join our Discord and talk with us and tell us what we did wrong and what we need to understand about Marvel, whatever. Just do it in a nice way. Anyway, see you guys later.
All right, see ya. Bye.